Hello, Tony Harding here from Harding Knives, back in the woods again. I'd like to have been back much sooner than this, but I said I'd come back and show you using my own knives, me using my own knives. And you may have seen this on Instagram and Facebook. It's a bone-handled knife with the etched, acid-etched finish in it. And I thought I'd put it to use. I've already started, obviously, because it just gets dull watching someone carve. But the reason I'm doing this is a pot hanger, and I really like this one. It can be, it's not the simplest of things. Certainly not the most difficult. There are easier ways, in other words, to do this, but I like this because it was the first pot hanger I ever learnt about. It was the first one I ever made, and I go out of my way to have one because it's kind of a tradition to me. And basically it comes with 4 components. The pot hangs on that hook at the bottom. The pole, sometimes it's a crane, or people have referred to it as a lot of things, but I'll show you in the end. The longest pole, which holds the weight, a forked stick to hold the pole, and if needed, a hook to hold the pole down, because you might have a bit of weight on the end of it and it might lift it up. But anyway, let me start by I've not used this knife yet, so I know it's nice and sharp. I wish I had a tree stump to do this on, but there isn't one, and I don't have anything big enough to create one. Not at the moment. All I'm doing here is marking an X. Okay, like that. And as you can see, you remove the bottom 3/4 of that X, you end up with a hook like that. Now when it comes to using a knife, this one doesn't look to be the safest, but actually you're really in control quite well here, because I'm guiding it with my fingers on the back of the knife. The wood is between the blade and my hand, of course, and yeah, it's actually a lot safer than it looks. But that's one of the reasons I chose this to make, is because it can be, at first, a bit of a fiddly thing to carve, but hopefully you don't rush to the woods for a few minutes and you've got the time. Of course I'm trying to do this so that you can see it as well, of course. Having to make do is part of bushcraft. So you can see what's happening here. It's a good job this knife is sharp, because trying to carve it so that you can see it wouldn't be so easy if it wasn't. And back to this again, and just keep going and going like this until you've created a hook. Is that the right name for it? Yeah, it's a hook. So once you've carved it out, you just want to carve this bit so that we have a bit of a point. Don't even know if that's on the lens. A bit of a point there, because that is going to sit on there. Now this is the second part. You find which way up this thing naturally falls, because you don't want to You don't want it spinning round. And that wants to be cut flat across there, a bit like a screwdriver. That's what I've heard it described as. It's got to be flat. Well, this camel bone feels quite comfortable. I didn't actually like this handle at first. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with it. I might take the bone off and replace it with something else, but it seems to be performing better than I thought. It's very comfortable. The problem with camel bone handles is you don't get much bone. There's not a lot to play with, so you can't get the symmetry that you want and can get with a lot of the wooden handles that I use. And so once you've got that flat, what we need is a little indentation. And that is what will take the hook, of course, of the vertical component. I'm not quite sure what the right terms are here. Don't think I've ever given them a name, to be honest. So that's the second component. Here's the other that I still haven't finished. And I actually love spending my time sat round a fire creating things. So I would have quite a thin stick to make it light. It gets lighter as it dries out, of course, to make it light. And I'd rather carve in lots of these just because I like sitting around the fire and carving. And when it sits on here, like so, it's quite simple really. You've got a simmer and a boil, or a very vigorous boil, or whatever, and it's kind of a temperature control for your cooking pot, which has to be a hanging pot, of course, but we'll make something else for frying pans and what have you. That's a different structure altogether. And I hope I'm not teaching any bad habits here, but I feel quite comfortable doing this. Don't feel as if I'm doing anything dangerous. There's nowhere for me to slip with this. Of course, when I'm showing people how to use the knives I make, I don't want to teach any bad habits, of course. And I don't think I am, but I'm sure somebody will point it out. This is the other vertical piece, the support pole. We often call it a V shape. That's a V. It never is. It's that we're going for, because we're going to hammer it in, and a V breaks off. So you want all the shock waves to go down through the pole and put it into the ground. So that's the shape. Never a V stick. I don't think there is any of the pot hangers that we have around the campfire. I don't think I've ever seen an actual V stick, because they're not very strong. And should the long pole have a tendency to spin and do its own thing, you can hold it in place with this, and that's exactly the same. It's kind of a reverse really. You want a straight with a piece coming off so that it can be hammered in. That's a different knife now, by the way. I'm sure you noticed. this is a piece of dead hardwood. It would be easier if it was green, of course, but it's not doing too bad anyway. Right, I'll put the thing together and show you what it looks like.